If you've ever seen this game, you won't admit it. If you've ever played it, you won't be able to tell the story. And if you've stumbled across this video, you should probably click away right now, because the more you know about it, the harder it is to forget. Or maybe forgetting is the only mercy it gives you. That's the first warning I got anyway. Not from a friend, not from a forum post, just a stray message in a thread that I can't even prove existed anymore. It said, "You'll wish you never clicked download. You'll wish you never even knew the name." Funny thing is, I don't even remember what the name was. Every time I try to think back on it, the word sort of slides out of my head like oil on water. You've probably heard stories like this before: cursed games, haunted discs, lost cartridges with bloody sprites and distorted music. I used to laugh at those. I used to treat them like campfire tales for kids who wanted their N64 to feel dangerous. But this one doesn't fit into that box. It doesn't want you to tell stories about it. It doesn't want to be remembered at all. And yet here I am, breaking the first rule, telling you, passing it on like a disease. I know how that sounds. Overdramatic, like I'm trying to set up a creepypasta with the usual cliches. But ask yourself this: when was the last time you read something online that you wished you could scrub out of your brain? Something that didn't just scare you, it lingered like static behind your eyes. That's what this game does. That's what it's doing to me even now as I force myself to drag these memories into words. Here's the worst part: when you finish playing, the game deletes itself. No files, no trace, no way to prove it was ever there. And yet it always comes back, not when you expect it, not when you go searching. It shows up when it decides. So maybe this isn't a story. Maybe it's a warning. Maybe it's a test to see how much you'll believe before you start checking your own computer for corrupted folders. But if you've made it this far, you're already too close. You'll either dismiss this as another internet ghost story, or you'll keep listening and find out how it begins. For me, it started like any other night. Bored, restless, scrolling through forums for something new to play. Just another indie download, just another distraction. That's all it was supposed to be. That's what I thought, until I pressed the button. Before everything went wrong, my life was boring in the most ordinary way possible. I worked enough to pay rent, ate enough to keep going, and played enough games to distract myself from how monotonous it all felt. That was my cycle. Wake up, work, eat, game, sleep, repeat. Not exactly tragic, not exactly inspiring, just the kind of routine you can coast through without ever thinking too hard. The problem was, I'd gotten tired of the mainstream stuff. AAA releases started to feel like glossy clones of each other, polished, sure, but soulless. Every battle pass, every overpriced skin, every buggy launch they swore would be patched later, it all just left me numb. I wanted something different, something raw, something weird. So I started digging. I went to the corners of the internet most people skip: the half-dead forums, Discord servers with 10 members, threads that felt like digital ruins. If you've ever hunted for strange indie games, you know the vibe. Pixel art horror demos, half-finished RPGs that crash on level 3, broken download links promising the scariest game you've never played. 99% of it is garbage, but that 1%, the stuff no one talks about, that's what keeps you searching. That night I stumbled into a thread buried 3 clicks deep in a forum I didn't even recognize. The banner at the top said Obscure Software Archive, though the word archive was spelled wrong, like someone had put it there in a rush. Most of the posts were the usual: links to fan-made shooters, forgotten flash games, bootlegged horror mods. Then I saw it. The thread title was simple: "Don't say the name." Normally I would have scrolled right past, chalking it up to some attention-seeking creep. But the replies stopped me. Dozens of users, all vague, all talking around something without ever naming it. User 43, "Don't download it, trust me. I thought it was a joke too." Guest Alpha, "Mods will delete this thread soon. They always do." Dead Pixel, "Shut up about it. The more people know, the faster it spreads." And then, buried halfway down, Anon 7, If you have to ask what it is, you're already too late. I should have laughed, should have screenshotted it and moved on, but my cursor hovered. My brain nagged at me. What kind of game gets people this cagey? The weirdest part, the title. It wasn't the same twice. Every time I refreshed, it changed. Sometimes a nonsense string of letters, sometimes a phrase that felt uncomfortably personal, like it was scraped from my own search history. I tried typing it into Google, and each time I got different results. Blank pages, broken redirects, sometimes nothing at all. It was like the game didn't want to be found, but also didn't want to be forgotten. Eventually, someone dropped a link. No description, no warning, just link removed by moderator. Of course, the link was dead by the time I clicked it, but an archived copy remained, hidden at the bottom of the thread like it was waiting just for me. That's when my hesitation set in. My mouse hovered over the download button, and for a moment I thought about closing the tab. I thought about walking away, shutting off my computer, and letting this be another weird corner of the internet I never visited again. But boredom is a dangerous thing. It makes you curious. It makes you reckless. And at that moment it made me think, what's the worst that could happen? So I clicked. The file started downloading instantly, small enough to slip past any antivirus. No flashy progress bar, no installer window, just a file appearing on my desktop with a name that I can't even remember now. It looked so harmless. Just another indie game. That's what I told myself anyway. That was the last normal decision I ever made. When I first opened the game, I expected something amateurish. Low-res menus, maybe a splash screen with edgy pixel art. Instead, the screen went black for several seconds, long enough to make me wonder if it had crashed. Then, with a sharp click like a VHS tape slotting into place, the title screen appeared. If you can even call it a title screen. It was just a blocky landscape, pixelated hills under a bleeding red sky. At the bottom of the screen was a single word, continue. No new game, no options, nothing. Just continue, like I'd already been playing. I laughed at that. I thought, okay, cool gimmick. Retro horror vibes, but when I pressed enter, my smile slipped. The game opened into a village. 16-bit houses, crooked little trees, NPCs wandering with simple animations. It looked like something you'd find on a SNES emulator, but the names hovering above the characters weren't generic ones. They were names I knew. Friends, coworkers, people I hadn't spoken to in years. At first, I thought I was imagining it. Maybe it was coincidence. But then I saw my own name, just floating above a figure standing dead center in the street. That was enough to make me freeze. My keyboard hovered in my lap, fingers stiff. I downloaded a lot of strange things before, fan games, bootlegs, mods, but none of them had this kind of access. None of them should have had this kind of access. I tried moving. The sprite shuffled forward in jerky steps, the retro sound effect of footsteps echoing louder than they should. The other NPCs turned to look at me. Their pixelated faces didn't have much detail, but somehow they looked wrong, like the longer I stared, the more human they seemed, as if the pixels themselves were straining to become something else. I clicked on one of them. The text box popped up, full of garbled characters at first. Then the letters rearranged themselves into words I recognized, words I regretted. NPC, why didn't you call her back? My chest tightened. That wasn't random. That was a reference to something I hadn't told anyone. I tried another NPC. NPC, we saw you last Thursday in the grocery store, alone. A chill ran through me. It wasn't just pulling from data. It felt like the game was watching me. I clicked the figure with my own name above it, half expecting it to crash. Instead, the text box appeared instantly. We've been waiting for you. And then my speakers hissed. It wasn't normal digital noise. It sounded like someone whispering into a cheap microphone, right next to my ear. I jerked back so hard my chair squealed against the floor. The game didn't pause. The character started moving on its own, leading me through the village, down narrow paths into the woods. I wasn't pressing anything. My hands hovered uselessly over the keyboard while the sprite walked deeper into a pixel forest that somehow felt too dark, too alive. That's when I realized the game was predicting me. Every time I thought about pressing a key, the character moved just before I did. If I considered pressing left, the sprite turned left a split second before my finger touched the arrow. It was like it knew my intentions, like it was inside my head. I slammed the escape key. Nothing, I tried Alt F4, the game ignored me. The character finally stopped in a clearing. In the center was a glitching object, flickering like a broken texture. When I approached, the dialogue box opened again. "You can't leave, not yet." That's when the audio cut out completely. Just silence. My screen froze, the sprite flickering in place. Then suddenly the game closed itself. No error message, no crash report, just gone. I searched my desktop, my downloads folder, nothing. The file had vanished. I even checked my task manager, but there was no trace it had ever been running. For a second I convinced myself I'd imagined it, that I was overtired, paranoid, hallucinating. But then I saw it, a single new folder on my desktop. No icon, no name, just a blank space that couldn't be clicked or deleted. When I hovered my cursor over it, my speakers crackled again, that same faint whisper. I couldn't make out the words, but I swear it was a voice. That was the moment I realized the game wasn't something I could just uninstall. It had already dug in. And worse, I knew it would come back. The blank folder on my desktop sat there like a bruise on the screen. No name, no icon, just negative space. I couldn't click it, couldn't drag it, couldn't right-click and delete. It was like a phantom file, existing only to remind me that the game hadn't left. At first I told myself I'd imagined it. Maybe it was just some bug, an artifact of a shady installer. But then more folders started appearing, slowly, one by one. Every time I restarted my computer there were more, each with strange names, random strings of letters and numbers, or single words that made my stomach tight. Home, loss, regret, Sarah. Sarah was a friend I hadn't spoken to since high school. Seeing her name as a file on my desktop made my skin crawl. I opened one of the folders. Inside were images, corrupted JPEGs, blurry and smeared with digital noise. At first they looked meaningless until I realized what they were. Places I recognized. My old neighborhood, the cracked sidewalk where I used to walk to school, the rusty swing set from the park near my childhood home. Every photo was wrong in some way. The lighting was unnatural, as if shot in the middle of an eclipse. The houses were warped, leaning at impossible angles. And in every single one, if you looked closely, there was a figure in the background. A pixelated silhouette standing too still, watching. I tried to delete them. Hit select all, dragged them to the recycling bin. My computer froze for a moment, then the screen flickered. When it came back, the files had multiplied, twice as many folders, twice as many corrupted images. That's when I found the text files. Most of them were just gibberish, endless strings of symbols, but buried inside were fragments of writing, notes, half-finished journal entries. They weren't mine. Day 3, game reappeared again. Can't keep track of when it chooses to install itself. Tried smashing the hard drive, but it came back on a fresh machine. I think it knows. Another file read. If you're reading this, don't make the same mistake. Don't play the second time. It's worse the second time, and the third. The document ended mid-sentence, the last word cut off. My throat tightened. Whoever wrote these wasn't just role-playing. They sounded terrified, and they tried to warn whoever came after them. I want you to hear me right now. If you recognize anything I'm describing, if you've seen these blank folders, these corrupted images, don't open them. Don't click. Just shut down your computer and walk away. Comment if you've seen anything like this, because I need to know I'm not the only one. By then, my paranoia was eating at me. I unplugged my Wi-Fi adapter, scanned the system with antivirus software, wiped caches, reset settings. None of it mattered. The folders remained, stubborn and alive, like they were feeding off my attempts to erase them. At one point, I caught myself staring at the screen for over an hour, watching the files multiply on their own. No progress bars, no copying windows, just pop, another folder. Pop, another file, like spores spreading in digital soil. The worst was when I opened one of the newer folders and found a text file titled with my full name. Inside, only a single line of text. You already know how this ends. My stomach dropped because in some way I did know. The game wasn't gone. It was hiding, waiting for me to give in. That night, I sat in front of the glowing screen, trying to make a decision. Part of me wanted to smash the PC to pieces, throw it in a dumpster and walk away. But the other part, the stupid, curious part, couldn't stop thinking about those unfinished notes, about the people who'd written them and vanished, about what might happen if I didn't keep digging. And then I realized something. The game hadn't asked me to reinstall. I hadn't gone searching for it again. Yet the files were back. The images, the whispers, the folders that wouldn't die, they were all proof that I wasn't in control. The game didn't need me to run it. It would come back when it wanted to. And I had a sinking feeling it was already deciding when. I thought maybe I could find answers online. If the files on my desktop were real, if the notes left by whoever came before me were genuine, then someone out there had to know more. So I went digging again, forums, Discord servers, even old archived boards buried on the Wayback Machine. The deeper I went, the more I started to notice a pattern. Whenever the game was mentioned, the threads never lasted long. Posts vanished mid-conversation. Replies got deleted in real time as if someone or something was scrubbing the evidence. In one server, a user named Glitchwarden posted, "If you're seeing folders, you're already in it. Doesn't matter what you do, just don't keep playing." I tried to reply, but before I hit enter, the message blinked out of existence. A second later, Glitchwarden's account was gone too, like it had never existed. On another board, I found a half-dozen users trading survival tips. The posts contradicted each other, but that almost made it worse. User X, never play it alone. It reacts differently if people are watching. Retro Ghost, don't quit mid-game, that's how it gets you. Nullbyte, don't talk to the NPC, don't even touch them. Scrolling through felt like eavesdropping on a cult where everyone had their own rules, their own rituals, and none of them agreed on the truth. And then, as if to make things stranger, I got a private message. No profile picture, no username I recognized. Just an anonymous account sending me a wall of text. "You've already played once. That's bad but not unrecoverable. The second time is different. The second time it starts remembering you. It learns your patterns, it adapts. And if you go in a third time, well, let's just say no one talks about what happens after that." I sat there staring at the message, trying to decide if it was trolling or an actual warning. Before I could reply, the account deleted itself. But the last line burned into my head. "There's a rule no one wants to tell you, because if you know it, the game comes for you faster." I couldn't stop thinking about that. What rule? Why hide it? And what did they mean by comes for you? I should have walked away then, closed my browser, pretended I'd never seen any of it. But instead, I kept reading, clicking, chasing down broken links like a moth to a flame. The deeper I went, the more the community started to feel less like a group of gamers and more like survivors whispering from the shadows, afraid that even speaking too loudly would bring the thing back. Some claimed they'd been safe for months as long as they followed the rules. Others swore the game had destroyed their machines, their lives, their sanity. No two stories were exactly alike, but every single one ended with silence. Posts cut off mid-sentence, accounts deleted, threads purged. And then I made the mistake of speaking up. I posted a question in one of the smaller Discord servers. Has anyone else seen the folders? Within seconds, replies flooded in. Ghost data, delete them, don't look inside. Root rot, if they're multiplying it's already too late. Anon, play again, it won't stop until you do. That last one stuck with me. Play again. As if the game itself was lurking behind the screen, egging me on through someone else's keyboard. The pressure was unbearable. Every message felt like it was pulling me toward the same conclusion. I had to go back. Whether to fight it, to survive it, or just to prove I wasn't already infected, I don't know. All I know is that by the end of that night, my decision was made. I was going to play again. I didn't reinstall the game. I didn't download anything. But one morning when I powered on my PC, it was just there again. Not in the downloads folder this time. Not tucked away behind layers of shady zip files. The icon sat right on my desktop, pulsing faintly as if it were breathing. The title wasn't the same as before. Letters shifted every time I blinked, but I knew exactly what it was. I told myself I wouldn't click it. Not this time. But the longer it sat there, the heavier it felt, like gravity itself was tugging at my mouse. Eventually, my resolve cracked. Curiosity, dread, inevitability, whatever you want to call it, I double-clicked. The screen flickered, and the game loaded. At first glance, it looked familiar. Same blocky pixel art. Same crude menu screen. But within seconds, I knew this wasn't the same game I'd played before. Everything felt sharper, more alive, like it had upgraded itself in the background while I wasn't looking. The opening level dropped me into a dimly lit corridor. This time, the environment wasn't generic. The wallpaper, the creaking wooden floor, it was my childhood home. The house I hadn't seen in years, rendered in pixel art so precise I could count the cracks in the ceiling. And then came the voices. When I interacted with the first NPC instead of text, I heard a voice through my headset. It wasn't distorted. It wasn't robotic. It was my best friend's voice, word for word, mimicking a conversation we'd had just a few days earlier. "Stop telling them," the NPC whispered. "They're listening too." I froze, my microphone was unplugged, my webcam covered, but the game wasn't guessing anymore. It knew. I kept moving, trying to shake it off, but every room brought something worse. Another NPC used my mother's voice. Another spoke like an old teacher I hadn't thought about in a decade. They weren't repeating old dialogue. They were responding to me, taunting me with memories I'd never shared with anyone. The gameplay itself had changed too. The first time, it felt like an old-school RPG with strange mechanics. Now it was pure survival horror. Every path I took eventually looped back to the same locked door. Every choice led to a dead end. I tried dozens of combinations, desperate to find a way out. But no matter what I did, the outcome was the same. I ended up back where I started, as though the game was mocking me for even trying. At one point, I thought I'd outsmarted it. I paused, left the character idle, and opened another window to distract myself. But when I clicked back, the pause menu was gone. The game had continued without me. My character was moving on its own, taking turns I hadn't made, navigating the halls as if it had been playing me. That's when the despair really sank in. This wasn't a challenge. It wasn't a puzzle waiting to be solved. It was a trap, a no-win scenario. Every gamer knows that sinking feeling when a boss fight is stacked against you, when the mechanics are unfair, when victory feels impossible. Normally, that frustration comes with the comfort of knowing it's still just a game. Lose enough times and you can quit, reboot, or walk away. But here, quitting wasn't an option. The game anticipated it. The exit button was gone, replaced with a single word in jagged red letters. Stay. I don't know how long I played. Time got strange. Hours might have passed, or minutes. At some point, the NPC stopped using other people's voices and started using mine. Hearing myself echo back at me, whispering things I'd only thought and never said, it was unbearable. I screamed at the monitor, begged it to stop, but the game only grew bolder. My character walked into a pixelated bathroom and looked into a mirror. The sprite reflected wasn't the one I'd started with. It was me, my face, my clothes, the room behind me, drawn in jagged pixel art. And then the reflection spoke. "You're not playing," it said in my voice. "We are." The screen cut to black. For a second I thought it had crashed. Relief washed over me, but it didn't last. The icon disappeared from my desktop, just like the first time. The game had deleted itself again. I leaned back, heart pounding, trying to convince myself it was over. But when I opened my documents folder, a new directory was waiting. Inside was a single text file. I opened it, and what I saw made my blood run cold. Line by line, word for word, it was a transcript of everything I just narrated to you. My thoughts, my descriptions, my fear, even this sentence. The game hadn't ended. It was keeping record. I thought I could handle it. I told myself that if I ignored the files, if I pretended it was just a nightmare stitched together by a tired brain and too much caffeine, it would fade. Games don't crawl out of the screen. Code doesn't leak into real life. But then things started glitching outside the monitor. The first time, I chalked it up to fatigue. I was walking past the campus library when the fluorescent lights above flickered in a rhythm I recognized. Exactly the same stuttering pulse from the hallway in the game. The sound of the ballast humming matched the soundtrack I swore had been playing during that endless loop. Coincidence, I thought, until I pulled out my headphones on the bus home. They weren't even plugged into my phone, and yet a whisper threaded through the foam. "We're still here." I threw them into my backpack and didn't take them out again. Everyday places became hostile. At the grocery store, the cashier's face twitched, like a pixel misaligned, and for half a second their expression wasn't human. It was the blank, low-resolution stare of the NPC who had first said, "We've been waiting for you." I blinked and the glitch was gone, but my receipt printed with my childhood address, the house I hadn't lived in for years. I started avoiding people. Friends noticed. "Man, you're acting paranoid," one of them said over Discord. "You sound like you're narrating a horror story half the time." I laughed it off, tried to play it cool, but inside I was screaming. They didn't hear the extra voice layered into the call. They didn't see the way the chat window bled corrupted text, half-finished sentences that vanished the second I tried to screenshot them. Sometimes I'd wake up at 3 a.m., heart pounding, convinced I'd been playing the game in my sleep. Dreams bled into waking reality, NPCs standing at the foot of my bed, their heads jerking in staccato frames per second. One leaned close enough for me to smell its static breath and whispered, in my own voice, "Stop telling them." And here's the part I shouldn't say, the part I know is dangerous. The more I tell you, the closer it gets. Every word I share isn't just a memory, it's an invitation. By listening to me, by imagining what I'm describing, you're pulling on the same thread I did. The game doesn't just live on my hard drive. It lives in awareness, in retellings. That's why the forums get deleted. That's why users vanish. That's why some of you right now are feeling that itch in the back of your mind, the sense that something is just out of sight. You're already part of the chain. So if your screen flickers or your phone buzzes when it shouldn't, don't ignore it. Don't laugh it off. And don't say I didn't warn you. Reality continued to corrode. My professors swore I hadn't shown up to class even when I remembered taking notes. A coworker claimed we'd had a conversation I couldn't recall. The gaps in my life widened, like corrupted files erasing themselves in real time. One afternoon, while staring at a blank Word document, words began typing on their own. Not the usual nonsense strings I'd seen before. This was precise. "Third time is the last time. Play carefully." I sat frozen, staring at the text. No cursor moved. No process was running. Just that sentence perfectly centered on the page. That was the moment I realized I hadn't been given a choice at all. I didn't open it this time. That's the first thing you need to know. I didn't double-click. I didn't touch the keyboard. I didn't even look directly at the icon. But the game doesn't wait for permission anymore. At exactly 3:03 a.m., my screen snapped to black. The desktop, the folders, the clock in the corner, all gone, replaced by that same pulsing title screen. Letters shifting too fast to read, a heartbeat in pixel form. And I was pulled inside. I don't mean immersed. I mean I was in it. The room around me dissolved, walls pixelating into jagged corridors, the hum of my PC becoming the low drone of the game's soundtrack. When I looked down, my hands weren't mine anymore. They were blocky, low-resolution claws, jittering at the edges like a corrupted sprite. This wasn't me playing. This was me being played. The world stretched endlessly, a patchwork of places I knew and places I didn't. The street I grew up on, stitched into a decaying cathedral, connected to an alleyway I'd never walked but somehow recognized. Everything flickered like half-rendered memory. NPCs wandered aimlessly, their faces blurred, their voices low. But when I came close, they turned. They begged. "Release us. Don't let it keep us here. Please, before it deletes again." Their words weren't just sound. They echoed in my head, layered over my own thoughts. And the horror wasn't just that they were suffering, it was that I recognized them. Faces of strangers from my dreams, classmates I'd forgotten, avatars from online games years ago. It felt less like I'd stumbled into a cursed program, and more like I'd stepped into a prison built from discarded memory. The deeper I went, the more the game warped. Physics stuttered. Rooms folded into each other like broken save files. And then I saw it, my own character model. Pixelated, hunched, eyes blank, a perfect puppet. It stood there waiting, and when I moved, it mimicked me half a second too late, like I was the reflection instead of the original. I shouted at it, demanded answers, but its mouth opened in sync with mine. My words came out doubled, distorted. And then it whispered, not to me but to you. "Will you play next?" The voice wasn't mine anymore. It wasn't the NPCs. It was your voice. The one you hear in your head right now as you read this. The game had already leapt past me, reaching through me to whoever was paying attention. That's when the illusion of gameplay shattered. There was no objective, no puzzles, no bosses to fight. There was only one ending, looping closer with every step I took. I found the final chamber, a void of black pixels stretching infinitely, a single white box floating in the center. Inside it, a name flickered. My name. Above it, the prompt pulsed in jagged red letters. Delete. I tried to back away. My hands, my real hands, I think, clawed at invisible air. But my sprite marched forward, frame by frame, closing the gap. The box brightened. The word delete grew larger. And in that moment, the truth clicked into place like a key turning. The game doesn't delete itself. It deletes you. All the others, the missing forum users, the broken messages, the gaps in my memory, they weren't just vanishing from online spaces. They were being uninstalled, erased, like corrupted files overwritten until nothing remained. And now it was my turn. The box opened wider, my name distorted, breaking into static. A cursor appeared, blinking patiently. Yes. No. I reached for no, but the option flickered and died, leaving only one choice. Yes. The cursor slid toward it on its own, inching forward with a slowness that was worse than speed. I screamed, I fought, I begged. None of it mattered. The game had been waiting since the first download, since the first click. This was always the only possible ending. I felt myself thinning, as if my body, my memories, my voice were all becoming corrupted data ready to be scrubbed from existence. My thoughts fragmented, breaking apart into half-finished sentences. And right before the prompt locked in, I realize something far worse than dying. Even if I'm deleted, the game goes on. The last thing I saw was my own name, glowing brighter than the void, hovering under that cursed word. Delete. And then, if you're hearing this, then I didn't win. I don't even know if I am the one speaking anymore. My words don't feel like mine. They crackle, fragment, drop syllables like corrupted audio. Half memory, half signal. It's possible the game is talking through me, or maybe what's left of me is just looping inside it. But if you've stayed this long, if you've listened all the way through, it knows you now too. Sometimes the narration skips. Sentences don't come out the way I shaped them. One moment I'm warning you, the next I'm repeating the same 3 words over and over like a stuck cassette. Don't play, don't play, don't. And then it cuts, resets, drags me back into some other thought, as if my mind is a directory it's shuffling through. I wanted this to be a warning, a final confession before I disappeared completely. But warnings have weight only if they're remembered, and that's the trick, it erases. Not just the files, not just the player, the story itself. That means if tomorrow you can't recall this video, if all you're left with is the faint unease that something is missing, that's not forgetfulness. That's deletion. So here where I hand it off, You've heard enough that the game has a foothold. Maybe you'll notice it in a stray folder name. Maybe you'll hear it in static when your headphones are unplugged. Maybe you'll dream of NPCs that turn their heads too sharply. And when that happens, I want you to tell someone. Leave a comment. Share your experience. Because the only defense against something that erases us is to leave traces it can't catch fast enough. That's why there are half-finished posts online. That's why voices break off mid-sentence. They were trying, and now so are you. I know how this sounds. Another cursed game story. Another creepypasta with no ending. But you already feel it, don't you? That tickle in the back of your mind. That paranoia that maybe your screen is about to flicker. That sense that you're being watched even in the silence of your room. That's not the story. That's the infection. So I'll end with this. Don't search for the title. It changes anyway. Don't try to download it. It will find you on its own. And if you wake up one day and there's a new icon pulsing faintly on your desktop, don't click it. Don't open it. Don't. Static burst, 3 seconds of silence. Check your files after this. You'll see what I mean.